Okay, hello. Welcome back to the follow up to our sejarah video, the last video at least. This is now 1.3. We're going to focus on this is my very gorgeous symbol of undang-undang and sistem pentadbiran. But before we move on, of course, we need to do a recap. Right? What did you even learn in the previous video? So we learned about 1.1. Oh, it's a bit aggressive. 1.1 and 1.2. Okay, 1.1 and 1.2. What were they about? They were about the characteristics ciri-ciri alam Melayu, kerajaan alam Melayu, the kingdoms, and one place in particular, Kesultanan Melayu Melaka. Okay, first, it's always the question of what do you need to build a kingdom? First, you need a king, Raja. Then you need the undang-undang beside the king, so that people will listen, so that there are rules. Respect the king. Alright, but who needs to respect the king? You have to answer that question. It is your rakyat. Okay, see, they're holding hands. That's how you know they're rakyat. Okay, but first, to form a kingdom, you need a place for all of us to live. Okay, this is your wilayah pengaruh. So, four things: raja, undang-undang, rakyat, dan wilayah pengaruh, the place you can influence. But this is the ciri-ciri for Alam Melayu. What about Kesultanan Melayu Melaka? Well, in Kesultanan Melayu Melaka, just by hearing the name, you know that it's no longer just a raja, because now we have more people in charge. We're going to go in depth into this later. So more people in charge, like the pembesar. Example, pembesar empat lipatan, you know, the very gorgeous pyramid I drew. Yeah, we have the we have the bendahara, the guy closest to the king, the sultan. Then penghulu bendahari, the money guy. Laksamana, the ocean guy, ocean policeman, the marine. And temenggung, the policeman on land. Okay, so now we have to call this the kerajaan. Okay, but aside from kerajaan, what's new? We have two extra things. Alright, we now have what do you call this? You now have the kedaulatan. We have to talk about this. I'm not gonna write the full thing. Kedaulatan and a new thing, lambang kebesaraan. Okay, so let's run through a little bit, right? 1.1, Alam Melayu. What is one ciri-ciri you can remember? The Raja merupakan tonggak utama kerajaan. Okay, tonggak utama kerajaan ditaati oleh rakyat. And you can give a contoh. Example, Raja Champa dikaitkan dengan Dewa Siwa, their god. Dianggap suci, was believed to be like a very holy guy, a holy deity, that they connected it with Dewa Siwa. But undang-undang, you can talk about how undang-undang dapat menjamin kesejahteraan, can keep the peace in sesebuah kerajaan. And you can give the contoh, example, di kerajaan Majapahit, they had the Kutara Manawa, which was a book essentially where they followed all their laws in there. Which, fun fact, women were allowed to be leaders according to this book, even though it didn't lead to many feminists or female leaders out in Majapahit. You can get, this is as much feminism as we got back then. Then we connect back to the rakyat. Mereka perlu taat setia sebab they are penduduk. Mereka merupakan penduduk di sesebuah wilayah yang taat setia kepada pemerintah ataupun raja. Okay, then you can also say mereka tidak menderhaka, they will not rebel, they will not betray their country. Right, well, can you give a contoh? How do you prove your loyalty? We know that Sriwijaya had a special thing, right? Remember, they had this rock. That's my interpretation of a rock. They had this rock and then they would pour water down and they would drink it. Yeah, this thing that's called the Telaga Batu. Please remember that. You might see it in your objectives. So, talking about that, we didn't talk about the wilayah pengaruh, which was the kawasan where the king had the most power. That's how you can understand it as. Wilayah pengaruh merupakan kawasan yang rakyatnya menerima dan memperakui pemerintahan seseorang raja. Okay, then you can give the contoh Funan. What were the big places in Funan? There were Sungai Mekong, the Laut Chamran, Segenting Kra, Selatan Myanmar. Segenting Kra used to be was the old name for Thailand. Alright, but we don't focus that much on KAM, on Alam Melayu, because they tend to test you on the one that is more difficult. Kesultanan Melayu Melaka. So what is different? Well, kerajaan, they first say that what was the first ciri you can remember? Kerajaan wujudnya sebab wujudnya raja. Okay, kerajaan muncul disebabkan adanya a king. Raja. Okay, then Raja ialah pemerintah tertinggi. Obviously, he's on the top of the pyramid. I don't have the pyramid. We'll draw the pyramid later. Pemerintahan beraja diperkukuh dan diperkukuh oleh dengan sistem pentadbiran, sistem pembesar 4 lipatan. The four guys I mentioned, they're quite important. Remember them. Alright. Now, selepas kedatangan Islam, pemerintah mula mengguna gelaran Sultan. That's why we call it the Sultanate of Melayu Melaka, not the Kerajaan of Melayu Melaka. Got me? It's not a kingdom, it's a sultanate. So, then moving on, we talk about the new one, kedaulatan. What does kedaulatan mean? Kuasa tertinggi, the highest, largest power, the supremacy of the superior leader, the king. Alright, ialah lambang kekuasaan tertinggi sultan. It represents the king's almighty power, the supremacy of the king. Okay, merupakan hak mutlak. This word, please remember it. We will see it in the future. Mutlak, hak mutlak means 100% power by the sultan untuk mengawal, to control the rakyat. Alright, I'm gonna rub this off now because I'm just gonna talk. Okay, so this helped to prevent the country from being taken over. Oh wait, no, that's not a point. So sorry, apparently I made that up myself. That. This proves because Dynasty Ming, remember China, memperakui kekuasaan Melayu Melaka. Alright, then, hey, wait a minute, that is a point. Bebas daripada campur tangan kuasa asing. I am right. Having kedaulatan proves that you are free from the colonization of other people, of other countries, other powers, kuasa asing. Then we go on to lambang kebesaraan. I'm just gonna write a ta here. If you know Chinese, you know what that means. Besar, kebesaraan. Merupakan identiti sesebuah kerajaan, ialah keistimewaan Sultan Melaka, ialah simbol kedaulatan Sultan. Okay, so give me a second. Where was I? Oh, simbol kedaulatan Sultan Melaka. See how this is connected with what we learned just now, the kedaulatan. So you can give the contoh of what are things that are considered lambang kebesaran. For example, the nobat, the instruments, then the regalia, what they wear, the colors they use, penggunaan warna, which is gold, not yellow. Then finally, the chap moho, which we have a story about. The chap moho digunakan untuk mengesahkan this word. Well, actually no, the original word doesn't have the G in it, but mengesahkan. Okay? Arahan daripada Sultan. It is used to identify, to prove that this is from the Sultan. Mengesahkan. Then we talk about the old things we learn. Undang-undang. I will not draw undang-undang. Terdapat dua undang-undang bertulis, which is what we'll learn today. Hukum Kanun Melaka and Undang-undang Laut Melaka. Yes, that's what it's called. So untuk mengukuhkan kerajaan, to strengthen the country, untuk melindungi rakyat, to protect the people. Then we move on to wilayah pengaruh, kawasan pemerintah yang diterima dan diakui oleh rakyat, a place where it's accepted and recognized by the people. Then finally, rakyat menumpukan the rakyat, mereka menumpukan taat setia. This is always the key word when you hear the word rakyat. Okay, the goal, be loyal. Now if you want a more in-depth explanation on everything, please check out the old video. Now we're going to 1.3, which is where we talk about the government system, pentadbiran, and undang-undang. So let's talk about pentadbiran first, shall we? First of all, wrong thing. Pentadbiran, that means the government system. So I do think this is more related to the, what can you call it? To the kerajaan, to the raja instead of the law, but they're both very interconnected. That's why they're put in the same subtopic. So this is your Sultan. I'm going to put an S here so you know the Sultan. Then we have one person at the bottom, then 3 people at the bottom. Of course, you might know the triangle, the system pentadbiran lipatan like this. Because indeed, the Sultan is at top and then the 4 people here. The 4 men are here. But the textbook gives you this picture because this is a more accurate diagram of those 4 lads, which is your bendahari, bendahara, and to the A. Bendahari, penghulu bendahari, then your laksamana and your temenggung. This is a more accurate representation of the power because the bendahara was a lot closer, a lot more powerful compared to the others. Okay? So they're trying to tell you that back then, the Malacca was so successful. Why? Because they had, oh my days, because they had, the king had people supporting them. They had this very glorious, very effective system to take care of the country. Well, okay, it wasn't that effective, as effective as it could be back then. So, what did the king do to reward these people? Well, mereka digunakan kawasan pegangan. Okay, you will most likely see this in your objectives. They might ask you, or maybe in like bagian A, the first question, okay, jelaskan maksud kawasan pegangan. Then you have to give it. Okay, so kawasan pegangan is the keyword. Merupakan kawasan yang dikurniakan oleh Sultan Melaka. Dikurniakan means it was almost blessed. Blessed, okay? We often use this word kurnia to talk about things that have been given by God. Okay, so like your life dikurniakan oleh Tuhan. But in this situation, who is this kurnia talking about? The king. That's how you know how important the king is. The king is being compared to God right now. How powerful? How much more powerful could you get? Okay, moving forward. They give you, okay, sistem pentadbiran KMM tersusun dan berhayati. Okay, mempunyai kuasa dalam segala aspek. Pemerintahan, the way you lead, peperangan, war, hubungan diplomatic relations, and finally, agama. Okay? So, dalam sistem pentadbiran KMM terdapat sistem lipatan pembesar berempat. The 4 dudes we were looking at just now. Then, we talked about having the 4 dudes, but do you think 4 men could really take over the entirety of Malacca? Remember how big Malacca was? Huge, okay? It was like the entire peninsula. That's how the peninsula looks like. The peninsula of the current Malaysia, then a little bit of Indonesia. That is apparently what the lands look like, according to me. So, no, they could not do that alone. See, 4 men are nothing. They need more men to do a job. So, what were the special people included? Pembesar lain yang membantu. So you can imagine, gosh, my marker pens don't like me. Someone get me new marker pens. Sultan here. Okay, we're gonna put them all up here, right? Then I told you there were 8 here, 16 here, then 32 people here. So somewhere along this line, we have special people you can mention. The Shah Banda. Right, I have actually no space. Then you have the Bentara. Then later you have the Orang Kaya. Then you have Hulu Balang. And lastly, the Penghulu. Okay, you might be thinking, whoa, what am I spitting in your face? Here's what I'm trying to tell you. Over here, the Shabanda, Bentara, Hulu Balang, Penghulu, and lastly the Orang Kaya, they all, okay, the Shabanda is a little bit special. This is a guy at the port. They won't ask you this, but this is good to know. They are at the Pelabuhan. You learn this in Form 2, alright? So what do the rest of these lads do? They all carry different names, but they do around the same thing. The Bentara, Orang Kaya, and Penghulu, they're kind of just leaders in the sense that they're town chiefs, they're chiefs. They're all chiefs of their own. And why are they given different names? Because we had different cultures then. So you will recognize that in Form 3, there were things like Bentara Luar, Bentara Dalam, these are all chiefs. Okay, same thing for Orang Kaya. You learn in Sabah and Sarawak. Okay. Sabah and Sarawak, they used Orang Kaya. That's how they just address people. That's how they address their chiefs. So it's just different naming, different fonts for the same job. Okay? Hulu Balang is a bit special. These are people involved in what you can call like the piracy system. These are people involved with all of that. So let's talk about the more important people, shall we? These guys, chill lah. They're fine. They're gonna show up. They're gonna ask you to give some examples. That's about it. Here are people that actually matter a bit more. See, to understand how this thing worked, how the government system worked, we have to know that Kesultanan Melayu Melaka, it was divided into 2 ways. First, you had 2 peringkat. Do I have space for this? Pentadbiran, this is the short form. Pentadbiran Pusat. And on the other side, peringkat jajahan. Okay, jajahan. Jajah, it is all from penaklukan. Remember we talked about this. Jajahan was a land that you attack, you invade the country, then get their land. You invade the country, not evade. Invade. Then Pentadbiran Pusat means that these are, we can consider fully part of the country, as in like the people like you, okay? Can you see that? Yes, the people like you in Pusat. The people don't tend to like you here. Why? Because, well, you colonize them. We're not that chill about it. People here, we like you more, okay? We like you more. So you can understand there is a difference in how you must, well, train them, how you must take control over them. You can kind of say like that. So first and foremost, let's talk about Pentadbiran Pusat, alright? The people who were a lot more peaceful. Dilaksanakan oleh pembesar berempat. The four guys on the top here, they did that job. So they say, hubungan na persefahaman, dua halal, a two-way relation. There you go, I found the word. A two-way relation between the Sultan and the pembesar, these four pembesar, memastikan kejayaan Kesultanan Melayu Melaka. Alright, that means they were really buddy-buddy up here, okay? Whoa. They were really buddy-buddy up here, okay? Good relations, besties. Here's a fun fact. Laksamana probably has a better relationship than the Bendahara has to the Sultan. I'll explain why later. So, first listen to that. Permuafakaan antara Sultan dengan pembesar mewujudkan proses pentadbiran yang sempurna. This is basically them just flexing, okay? Take it how you will. How true is this? They're saying that how good the great friendship relationship between these two permuafakatan, 协议, if you know Chinese, antara Sultan dengan pembesar mewujudkan a perfect governing process. Dapat mengelakkan, it could prevent a bunch of tindakan sewenang-wenangnya oleh pemerintah. Tindakan sewenang-wenangnya means that doing things just on your own accord. I don't give a shit what the other people think, what's the benefit of the country, well, the Sultanate, I'm just doing this for my benefits. But because they were so buddy-buddy, this never happened. How likely is this? Take it with a grain of salt. So, let's talk then. Whoa! So we've talked about how the Pentadbiran Pusat was taken over by our four leaders. Now, who are these four leaders? You're gonna start punching me, but let's explain about them, shall we? Ding, 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 ding. Okay. Four members. Who are they? Do I have a good marker pen? Okay. This is the Empat Lipatan. We're going to talk about the four members. Here's me erasing the rest of the people down. So, who are the four people? I'm going to draw them out. Ta-da! I'm putting the Bendahara on the same line just so you can like look at them easily. So, Bendahara, Penghulu Bendahari, Laksamana, Temenggung. Okay, first and foremost, we have to know what is the peran of the Sultan in all of this. We just said they're buddy-buddy. So, Sultan berkuasa dalam segala aspek. Pemerintahan, the government system. Peperangan, the war, stuff like that. Everything regarding the war. Hubungan diplomatik dan agama. Cool. And I want to talk about these guys. So first, Bendahara, which we can say is... not the symbol. They are the closest in terms of being to the Sultan, to which menjadikan ketua pentadbir, they kind of control everything that the Sultan is not doing. The Sultan doesn't do that much. Come on, we know this. So, sebagai ketua turus angkatan tentera, this is a penolong in a sense. Ketua turus means you're a penolong, you're a helper regarding all things military-like. Yeah. Menasihati Sultan dalam pelbagai hal. Now, this is a fun thing to talk about. Menasihati Sultan. We've seen those dramas, right? Those corrupt leaders. It's usually this guy who's corrupt, because this guy, Munasihati, is giving advice to the king, to the Sultan. So how do you corrupt the king? He's gonna have the best chance of corrupting the king compared to the three lads here. Alright, menjadi pemangku Sultan. There you go, they say right here. What is this word? Pemangku. It means styli, which means the replacement. If the king was to have no heirs, or at least he doesn't want those heirs to be the next king, and was to have no one else in power, thus the Bendahara would be the new Sultan. Alright, this actually happened in our case. We talked about it in Johor. Then, Penghulu Bendahari, menguruskan perbendaharaan, talks about all the management systems secara teratur. Then, daripada jenis cukai, the tying of taxes, and the kinds of gifts. Ufti. These gifts are different from my happy birthday gifts. These gifts, ufti, this word. can only be applied to gifts given by governments. So like let's say I got this from the dynasty Ming that want to establish government relations. Okay? Anything I give you is not an ufti, it's just a gift, hadiah. Ufti purely for governments. Alright. So daripada wilayah naungan dan urusan perdagangan. They say here from all the places that are under the protection, the naungan of KMM, and from trading relations. So, what about the Temenggung? Alright, these two, they only have one sentence. That's how you know how important they are. We already went through a lengthy explanation of this in Form 2, so this is brief. Menjaga keselamatan kota Melaka. Kota meaning the, what do you call it? Kota. This is the center, almost the center of the country. So like, you know, kota of a place. The base, okay, like that, the stronghold. So again, the police. Menjaga keselamatan. Safety. Then over here, Laksamana. I'm actually putting it in the wrong place. I put my Temenggung here. Sorry. You're the police. Yeah, whatever. Okay. Sebagai Panglima Angkatan Laut Melaka. Laut Melaka. Angkatan Laut Melaka. The leader of all of the Marines. Alright. That's it. Let's talk more. Ding ding. Wait, actually, yeah, we'll erase this. Hold up. I want to draw back my pyramid. So, another thing I should have mentioned before. Over here. Is that I talked about kawasan pegangan. I realized I missed something, which is, it's a very lengthy sentence. I said it's kawasan yang dikurniakan. You can also say kawasan pentadbiran yang diberikan kuasa oleh Sultan kepada pembesar berempat untuk merintah atau mentadbir sesuatu wilayah, sungai dan pulau. It's a very long, lengthy explanation. It's fine. I feel like you should memorize the definition better, which is like one sentence. Okay, so let's move on. We've explained this. Now let's go back, because I said there are two peringkats, right? Pentadbiran pusat. Okay, what we can go through about here is that dilaksanakan oleh siapa? Well, the guy closest to the king, bendahara. Hubungan, did I mention this? Hubungan. Oh no, I already mentioned this. Okay, bendahara ialah pembesar yang mempunyai tugas dan peranan yang sangat penting. Alright, so that means the bendahara is the most important guy here. We already know this, the relationship between these two stronger. I forgot to mention why Laksamana might be closer to here. Because it's not in the textbook, it's in your Form 2 textbook. Here's a quick brief on it. The Laksamana is relating to everything on the oceans, right? It's also the Laksamana also helps with any personal things by the Sultan. So things the bendahara does not have access to. Okay? That means like personal letters, stuff like that, the Laksamana goes through them. Why? Because Laksamana is usually someone from Orang Laut. We just said that Parameswara came with his Orang Laut friends because he was an Orang Laut too. Thus, the relationship between the Sultan and Laksamana might be closer than you think. Which is why we had drama with Laksamana trying to defend the king, when Bendahara tried to become the king, you know, Form 2, please remember that. Oh, actually, you can throw that information away. Let's talk. Back here, Bendahara. Alright. What important jobs did the Bendahara have? Well, berperanan sebagai ketua pentadbir, ketua turus angkatan tentera, menasihati Sultan, menjadi pemangku Sultan. Hey, didn't you just explain this to me? Yes. See how they're repeating the same facts? Hey, it's easier for you. You don't have to memorize that much. So, next thing we need to talk about for pentadbiran pusat mempunyai sistem keuangan. This is how I'm going to draw it. Sistem keuangan yang teratur. Right? How so? Sumber pendapatan Kesultanan Melayu Melaka diperoleh daripada urusan perdagangan, the drawship, because that's how they did their trading. That's a gay ship, okay? Then, segala jenis cukai dan ufti daripada wilayah penaklukan, you see the connection here? Serta naungan, alright, all the taxes and gifts. Ufti, gifts. Then finally, we mentioned the others. Where's my rubber? There we go. Penghulu Bendahari. You already heard all this money stuff. You know for a fact Penghulu Bendahari is a part of this. Penghulu Bendahari dilantik menguruskan perbendaharaan secara teratur. Again, we already mentioned this. Amazing. Now, Shah Bandar. Hey, I mentioned this before on the Pembesar lain. Here's the part where we explain. Chap anda bertanggungjawab mengutip cukai di pelabuhan, pembesar lain mengutip cukai di kawasan pegangan. Okay? So, the chap anda is responsible for all the cukai for the ports, like I said. Ports, that's the boat. Now, hasil perbendaharaan disalurkan untuk membeli senjata. The income we get, pendapatan from all of the actions I just told you, gifts and perdagangan, where do they go to? Disalurkan untuk membeli senjata, to buy weapons and to build the kingdom, membina istana, to build the castle, more like it. So kebijaksanaan pemerintah mengawal perbendaharaan menjadikan KMM is really, really maju and really, really makmur. This is just praising KMM, okay? That's fine. You can praise them all you want. So then we talk about the third point, which is mempunyai sistem keselamatan. How do I draw keselamatan? I'm just going to write the word selamat here, okay? Keselamatan yang kemas. It was organized. Why? We mentioned our two bros. Okay, our Temenggung and our Laksamana. Okay, so keamanan negara, the harmony of a country, menjadi teras. It is crucial. It was a core thing kepada kemasyhuran, the popularity of the Kesultanan Melayu Melaka. Kemasyhuran can also be the glory, alright, of Melaka. Why? We talk about it. Temenggung menjadi menjaga keselamatan kota Melaka. See, it's the same fact. Look over here. Laksamana bertindak sebagai Panglima Angkatan Laut Melaka. Same fact. Amazing. You don't have to memorize new things. So let's go on to peringkat jajahan. Peringkat jajahan is pretty short, so let's go with it. Pembesar ditugaskan untuk menguruskan pentadbiran di daerah dan kampung. So there are two places. Daerah, we talked about this, is like kawasan. Alright, it's a bit smaller. Then imagine like wilayah is the biggest. Wilayah goes down is daerah, goes down is kampung. That's how you write kampung, right? Yeah, sure, whatever. Kampung. My handwriting. Right, pembesar ini, the pembesar here, the advisors, there you go, I found the word. Pembesar ini dilantik oleh Sultan dan pembesar berempat. The Sultan and the four besties here, they work together to pick the pembesar who is in charge of all this. So, peranannya menjaga dan mengekalkan keamanan kawasan pentadbiran. The difference between kekal here, and like the words we learned just now, which is like menjamin, menjaga, is that menjaga and menjamin is to take care. But kekal is to reinforce. That means you already have harmony. It doesn't make that much of a difference, but because we want to use the same words the textbook uses, is how you can remember it. Jajahan, right? They already have harmony because they used to be part of a whole different country. Alright, but now they are taken under the wing of a completely different ruler, Melaka. So it is their job as the pembesar to make sure that the harmony they had before stays in the new kingdom they're part of, the new sultanate they're part of. Then finally, the pembesar, their favorite job, mengutip cukai. That's not how you do cukai. Whatever, I'm gonna draw a money symbol. Cukai, okay? And that is everything here for pentadbiran. Now, give me a second to rub the whiteboard, and we're gonna talk about not the perundangan, the undang-undang. Okay, I think this is a little bit more fun. Get ready. Okay, so I'm back. This is the lovely diagram I've made while I was gone. So, I got my marker pens. We've already jelaskan about the pentadbiran. Now we'll talk about what I think is a little bit more interesting, the undang-undang, which is the laws. We've already talked about laws just now, right? They are derived from Hukum Kanun Melaka and Undang-Undang Laut Melaka. So let's focus on this one first. Hukum Kanun Melaka. It is the general one, and it is known as the more complete one. So there are 44 fasa, which means there's 44 like rules inside this rule book. So they can be generalized into 4 categories, okay? So they give you, the way they say is that Hukum Kanun Melaka and Undang-Undang Laut Melaka, tujuannya untuk melaksanakan pentadbiran, the governing system, untuk menjamin kemakmuran, the prosperity, dan kesejahteraan Kesultanan Melayu Melaka. Kesejahteraan meaning like the peacefulness and the prosperity. So peaceful and prosperity. Kemakmuran dan kesejahteraan. So what did they do? Well, they tell you that the Hukum Kanun Melaka mengandungi 44 pasal membincangkan hal jenayah, crimes, then hal kekeluargaan, which means like the family matters, more personal matters, then peranan sultan dan pembesar, or else they say over here bidang kuasa sultan dan pembesar, then finally hal berkaitan ekonomi. Alright, so what are the important things you know before we even go down to explain of this? How did they get these two undang-undang? Well, they were derived from berkaitan ataupun asas pembentukan di base 基础 to build up to both of these laws was through berasaskan Sharia. What is Sharia? Sharia is referring to the Islamic law, okay? Islam 的法律 and hukum adat, which means the adat is that they already have. If you remember from 2 or from 3 sejarah, I'm not sure, we already talked about adat Temenggung and adat Pepatih. These are adats that were also influenced when creating these laws. So let's talk. Jenayah kekeluargaan, isu kekeluargaan, peranan sultan dan pembesar, and finally economy. Let's start with jenayah first. Crimes are arguably more interesting. So first things first, what is considered a crime? Apakah yang dimaksudkan apabila saya sebut jenayah? Well, first and foremost, perbuatan yang menggugat. Gugat means you destroy, you interrupt. Ketenteraman dan keharmonian, you interrupt the peacefulness, the harmony of the Sultanate of Melaka. So obviously if you do anything regarding what I just said, if you interrupt menggugat kesejahteraan, keharmonian dan ketenteramaan, it will be automatically known as a crime. Jenayah. Hukuman setimpal dikenakan. 相应, that means if you have done something, let's give an example, right? Whatever you have done will receive its punishment accordingly to what crime that has been committed. So, hukuman setimpal dikenakan seperti membunuh, the act of murder. It's different from killing. Membunuh means you have to do it with an intention, right? Menikam, stabbing, and then mencuri, stealing. These are examples. There's a lot more out there, like offending women. That was one. Props to Hukum Kanun Melaka for having that as a rule, as a punishment, considering as a crime. Stealing someone's wife was also one. So do with that information what you will. And they give you a contonia. This is okay. They might ask you this in objectives, but if you're only having your exam through like 1 and 2, maybe we'll look out on this one. So Pasal 5.1. Also, like, why did they say 5.1? Because on 5 they have a lot more, and 5.1 is mentioning how apabila seseorang didapati membunuh orang lain tanpa pengetahuan raja atau pembesar, maka dia akan dihukum bunuh. This is where we connect the idea of hukuman setimpal. That means that if someone were to murder someone else without the knowledge of the king or the advisors, which is like, your bendahari, or maybe even your Shah Banda. Why? Because the king and these advisors have the power, mempunyai hak to tell you to kill people. But if you do it on your own accord, like I'm mad at Adam for being a gaylo, so I get Chushin because I'm a regular man. I get my friend Chad to murder Adam. I'm going to jail. What will they do to me? Since this is an act of killing someone else, I will go through the punishment of the death sentence, the death penalty. So dihukum bunuh. Mati and bunuh is different. You will learn that because hukum mati does not mean you have killed someone. It could mean like different things like betraying your country. But hukum bunuh only applies when you have done something to murder someone else. Okay? So, then we talk about pasal keempat. Hukuman bunuh kepada sesiapa yang ingkar arahan dan memalsukan titah sultan. What does this mean? Mengingkar means you 违反, you go against the orders of the king, of the sultan, or example, the orders of the sultan was, I need to serve a galo. I need to serve a galo to the sultan. But instead, I tell people, okay, for example, I am a messenger. I need to tell chat that, hey, I need to serve a galo to whatever country. But instead, I tell chat, I lie. I said, actually, the sultan said you have to serve a straight man over there, and I give Adam. Then that would be memasukkan tidak sultan. Alright, that's an interesting way to remember it. Pasal keempat dan pasal 5.1. Then we move on to the next one. Peranan sultan dan pembesar. Setiap pembesar mempunyai peranan dalam dalam pentadbiran. Sorry, every pembesar has their place in the pentadbiran. If not, they will not be a pembesar. They will just be regular people, rakyat merdeka or hamba, like slaves, like you and me. Okay. So, pembesar perlu arif. Arif is the keyword here. Arif means 精通. They have to be very alert. They have to be very sharp with what they do dalam pelaksanaan undang-undang. Because if you apply your rules wrong, you could easily cause the harm and death of innocent people. So, what are the contohs they give? Well, dalam pasal pertama dijelaskan tugas sultan, bendahara, temenggung dan penghulu bendahari untuk what is this? Bendahari, there you go. Oh, that's it. Full stop. So sorry. So yeah, you see they don't mention Laksamana. Laksamana has bigger things to deal with. We'll talk about over here, Undang Laut Melaka. So, Sultan bertanggungjawab untuk melantik pembesar seperti pendahara dan temenggung. It's about it. You can give it a pass through. Basically, what is the important thing? They have to do their job well. Mesti arif. I'm gonna write that down actually. To be arif, you have to be sharp in your job. Okay? So, moving onwards then, we talk about kekeluargaan. This is more interesting. So, isu kekeluargaan diberikan perhatian oleh KMM. Yeah, pass through. So, bertujuan. Okay, what's the tujuannya? Mewujudkan keharmonian, to have harmony in a family, dan bertujuan menyelesaikan, solve masalah, problems dihadapi oleh keluarga atau dalam perkahwinan. Okay, in a family, or how do you get a family? Through, marriage, that, perkahwinan. So they give a contoh hukum dalam perkahwinan. Pasal 26, the 26th pasal menyatakan pernikahan, which means like the marriage registration. You have to give up your certificate, stuff like that. Memerlukan 4 orang saksi, 4 people as witnesses. Jika tidak cukup, memadai 2 orang saja. If you don't have enough, you don't have 4 people who can show up for your marriage registration, you need at least 2. At least 2. Hamba abdi, which means your slaves, dan wanita, women, tidak boleh menjadi saksi. That's right. When we said 4 people, we meant 4 men, because only men are people apparently. Women, same level as slaves. That's how bad it was, okay? But that is what it is. Pasal 26. Then economy. So what? Mempunyai peraturan yang jelas. It have clear rules tentang urus niaga, all about the rules of trading, untuk mengawal perdagangan di Melaka, to control the trading in Melaka. Because remember, Melaka is a kingdom, a sultanate that became popular, became prosperous because of trading. That's why we have separate rules for them. So, agar tidak berlaku, supaya, that means in order to ensure that tidak berlakunya sebarang kesalahan bertentangan dengan ajaran Islam, so that there will be no mistakes that are connected to the Islam teachings. For contohnya, pasal 30 dinyatakan amalan riba. Amalan riba means the act of borrowing money, not borrowing money. Amalan riba means the act of borrowing money and then the really high interest. Yes, the interest itself, that is amalan riba. Diharamkan, is absolutely prohibited dalam urusan perniagaan. That is why, have you noticed in Malaysia, did you know that banks often are divided to normal banks and Islamic banks? Because the rules work differently if you follow Islam law. Example, interest. not really a thing we allow you to do. So, orang tersebut hendalah akil balik. They have to be a grown-up. Siuman, they have to have a brain. They have to be educated. They have to know chat. Dan perlu melafazkan niat jual beli. Syia, they have to state the reason of why they need to buy things. Okay, so that sums up everything here. Then at the side, they give you a little, like on the info side, they say you, dalam hukum kanun Melaka, terdapat beberapa perkataan yang hanya boleh digunakan oleh raja. This is connected to what we now know as bahasa istana, where you have words like tita. That means if a king says anything, it is not Sultan bercakap. We don't say that. We say Sultan bertitah. Murka, that means the Sultan is angry. We don't say Sultan memarahi. We say Sultan murka. Kurnia, which means, like I said, you give something, right? That is something only the Sultan can use or God. Then anugrah, which means again like you give something again. So these are words that can only be used by the Sultan. Rakyat tidak dibenarkan mempersendahkan dan menuturkan perkataan tersebut. They cannot use or say these words. Alright, so that is Hukum Kanun Melaka. Now we have to go on to Undang-Undang Laut Melaka. So I'm going to get rid of this diagram. Let's look over here. So, for Undang-Undang Laut Melaka, diusahakan oleh beberapa nahkoda Melaka. Nahkoda, I don't think I have yet to talk about them yet. These are captains. You give them a hat. These are captains. You know, on your ship you have captains. These are what these people are. So, imagine Undang Laut Melaka is in the middle here. What are the things that are important? Number one, peranan nahkoda. Then, your hukuman for crimes, jenayah. Di atas kapal, that's a very long thing. I'm just going to draw a bolt here. Di atas kapal. Then, percukaian. I'm going to draw the money symbol. And then, this is cukai. Can you even see that? Oh no, it's too lama. Terlalu at the bottom. It's okay. I'll draw a money symbol to let you know this is cukai. Okay, good. Then finally, we have peraturan pelayaran. Again, per ship. The rules and regulations when you, what is it, pelayaran? When you go sailing. Okay, so let's start, right? Diusahakan oleh beberapa nahkoda, iaitu nahkoda jenal, nahkoda diri, nahkoda sahak. Honestly, this is fine. These are just a few things they usually won't ask you unless you want to be extra and give extra points. Let's learn about something else, right? Diperkenan oleh Sultan Mahmud Shah. This, who can be a nahkoda? This has to be verified by the Sultan. Specifically, they say Sultan Mahmud Shah because the Sultan here, he decided, I want to be part of this. So Baginda wanted to be a part of the Undang-Undang Laut Melaka. They'll probably ask you in the objectives. Now let's come to something they might ask you on the essays, like soalan bagian B or bagian C. So, kandungan merangkumi berkaitan dengan hukum jenayah, peranan nahkoda, peraturan pelayaran, dan percukaian. So, first, let's talk about the captain's thing. So you have to think, right, on a ship, who is the leader? Ideally, the nahkoda, the captain. So, nahkoda berkuasa penuh. See the word we use? We don't say kuasa mutlak because that only works for governments. A ship captain is not a government system. Berkuasa penuh, though. Diibaratkan is almost like diibaratkan 比喻就像 sebagai raja dalam pelayaran. This nahkoda is basically a king. I should give it a king crown then. It's basically the king on the ship. Semua pihak harus mematuhi arahan dan perintah nahkoda. Every single person on the boat has to listen to the rules and the orders of the captain. So, contohnya pasal 13 Darjah 1, nahkoda perlu diberikan keutamaan untuk berniaga selama 4 hari. The captain has to be given a 优先, that means they're given the priority to trade for at least 4 days. Then, for contoh darjah 3 sekiranya if the ship captain, if nakoda hendak singgah, wants to stop di tempat yang tidak ada dalam senarai persinggahan, if the captain wants to stop at a location that they've previously not discussed about, they have a map and they're like, we're gonna stop here, then stop there, but then halfway through the captain's like, let's stop there. What? Okay. Well, nakoda perlu bermesyuarat, has to have a meeting dengan semua orang di dalam kapal untuk mendapatkan persetujuan, so that the captain can get the kebenaran, can get the persetujuan, everyone to agree, the agreement. Alright. So nakoda is very important. Now let's talk connected to this. Since the nakoda is giving out a lot of arahan and arahan and perintah commands, let's talk about the rules of sailing. So, menjelaskan peranan pegawai selain nakoda. So, over here, we not only talk about the nakoda, we have a whole section about this, right? We're not discussing about the other members, pegawai, members selain nakoda, termasuklah jurumudi, which is the jurumudi is the people who are going to steer the ship, stuff like that. People who are on the ship, honestly. Then the navigator, malim, that's navigator. Then jurubatu, the person who is in charge of lifting down the anchor. These are some jobs, alright? Some members. Personally, I would remember the malim and jurubatu because those are easier to remember. But it's up to you. Then, tujuannya menjadikan pelayaran selamat dan lancar, so that it's safe and smooth. Alright, dalam fasa ke-9, malim, the navigator, harus arif. Is the word again, arif. We used it for the pembesar at Hukum Kanun Melaka. Now we're using it here. Arif have to be sharp tentang ilmu pelayaran. Okay, contohnya, malim perlu mengetahui keadaan ombak. The navigator needs to know the situation of the waves dan kedudukan bulan dan bintang, knows the location, the positions of the moon and the stars, so like the constellations, agar pelayaran selamat, so to have a safe sailing, shipping, whatever you want to call it, man. Safe adventure, safe journey. Jika malim lalai dalam menjalankan tugas, if the navigator is unreliable, cannot be trusted with their information, that means they don't actually know anything about constellations or the waves. They're just kind of like, yeah, we should keep going. Maybe. Right, what will happen is that sehingga menyebabkan pelanggaran dan kerosakan. That means you hit like a crash. It doesn't need to be a crash with on the boat. It could be on the ship. It could be a crashing with a rock. So, or kerosakan, any kind of destruction. Well, malim itu akan dijatuhi hukuman bunuh. Kapoom! They die. So yeah, tough job for the malim. So finally, we're moving on to hukuman, not finally yet. Next, we're moving on to jenayah. If there was a crime on top of your boat, perbuatan jenayah, again, they have to define what it is. Menggugat, we said it before, menggugat ketenteramaan dan keharmonian di atas kapal this time. Not on the KMM, on the boat. Menjelaskan hukuman terhadap perbuatan mencuri, membunuh, same as the first two, but there's no menikah this time. We have memberontak, which means you cause chaos. Alright. So, contohnya dalam pasal ke-5, seseorang berkelakuan jahat. That means you do anything that's quite cruel, evil. Alright. Any kind of almost sabotage, you can think of it like that. Dan membunuh orang di atas kapal. You murder someone on top of the ship, maka orang tersebut akan dikenakan hukuman mati. See the difference here? Actually, now I think about it, I don't know why they use hukuman mati and bunuh. But for this particular instance, you can remember that for specifically murdering people on top of a ship, we say hukuman mati. Everything else, hukuman bunuh. Got it? You can almost connect it, right? The malim is like the navigator on the boat. That's hukuman mati. That's how I would connect it. So, we move on to the final part. Percukaian. Okay, percukaian yang sistematik dan adil dinyatakan dalam undang-undang ini. Okay, systematic means they're systematic, and adil means they are justified. They are fair. There we go, that's the word. Pelbagai cukai berdana, that means like a toll fee. for whatever place you go, that's toll fee. Dan hasil perniagaan dikenakan dalam urusan pelayaran untuk perdagangan. Whatever you bring in on your ship also has tax. Okay? So, contohnya dalam pasal 6 ke-6 darjah 3, I'm having trouble reading these names. Dalam pasal ke-6 darjah 3, nakoda, your captain, menentukan jumlah cukai dikenakan terhadap penumpang. Has to determine, tentukan jumlah cukai, the amount of tax that we dikenakan atas penumpang, the people who are on your ship. It means not part of the crew. As in, like, I was a random man and I'm like, hey, let me on, please. I need to go over to Malacca. And you're like, why not? I would be a penumpang. So, yaitu 1/10, 1 out of 10 daripada hasil penumpang jika ingin turun sebelum sampai janjinya sama ada 3 tahun, 3 bulan, atau 3 hari. What does that mean? Okay, you have to get 1 out of 10 of the items, okay, things that the penumpang need that are bringing onto your ship. If the penumpang, wants to leave the ship before the determined date, which could be like 3 days, 3 weeks, and 3 months. And that's it. We've done everything over here. We've done 1.3. It's finished. We talked about pentadbiran, which again, sistem pembesar 4 lipatan. Then we talked about how Melaka was divided to peringkat jajahan dan pentadbiran pusat. Then we talked about the 2 undang-undang here. So now we're going to the final part, which I think 1.4 is basically a recap of everything you learned, so that we can go by to this quickly. Let me write this down. So, the last thing here we learned is the peranan dan pemerintah, peranan pemerintah dan rakyat. What is the importance or the responsibility of the ruler, pemerintah, and their people? Okay, they're holding hands because they are the rakyat. So, before we start, hubung kait pemerintah dan rakyat sejak zaman Kesultanan Melayu Melaka selaras dengan konsep wa'adat. Whoa, new vocab. What does wa'adat mean, you might be wondering? Well, wa'adat bermaksud perjanjian. Dilakukan oleh golongan di perintah, diwakili oleh demang lebah daun, dengan golongan pemerintah diwakili sang sapurba. This is fine. You most likely see this in objectives again. So the wa'adat they're mentioning, it is a perjanjian. It is it's an agreement. There you go, I found the word. Perjanjian between golongan perintah, right? Golongan pemerintah, which is the people who are ruling, and the people who are being ruled, di perintah, which we stated before in 1.1 and 1.2. So, we continue onwards. Rakyat yang bernaung di bawah pentadbiran sultan dan pembesar saling berkait antara satu sama lain. What this chapter is trying to tell you is that the relationship between, here's a pyramid again, but instead of doing 4 lipatan, let's do this. Di pemerintah dan di pemerintah. So like the king is still on top here, it's like the pembesar, right? So they're trying to tell you that the relationship between these two, hukum kait, they have to be closely related. Saling berkait, they're connected to one another. Perkaitan ini untuk menggerakkan jentera kerajaan dan sistem pemerintahan to help move the machine of a kingdom and its government system. So, hubungan secara timbal balik. Hey, you've seen this before. Timbal secara timbal balik, it's a double, two-way, dual-way, both-way relationship. We learned this in 1.2. Ini mengukuhkan, it strengthens KMM, I didn't write it, Kesultanan Melayu Melaka yang membawa kegemilangan kesultanan ini. It's a lot of boasting again. So, hubungan, they give you this over on the side, if I'm not wrong. Over here on page 13, you can see here, rakyat itu umpama akar, yang raja itu umpama pohon. Akar means, they're trying to tell you that the people, the rakyat, are like the branches, not the branches, are like the roots of a tree. Meanwhile, the kings and the leaders are like the branches. Okay? Jikalau tiada akar, nescaya pohon tiada akan dapat berdiri demikian lagi. Raja itu dengan segala rakyatnya. That means that if a tree does not have its roots, or if a king does not have its people, it cannot stand. Then there's a possibility that they might ask you this question in K-Bat, where they'll be like, give me a peribahasa, give me an idiom that is synonymous with this piece of text, which you can say, umpama aur dengan tebing, bagai aur dengan tebing. Okay? So hubungan baik antara pemerintah dengan rakyat sangat penting to what? Protect, memelihara kedaulatan raja, kedaulatan kuasa tertinggi, dan kesejahteraan rakyat, the peacefulness and the heart, the prosperity of the people, rakyat, serta mengekalkan, to maintain, kemajuan dan keamanan negara. It's a lot of words. Let's get to the main point, shall we? Let's talk about it. The peranan. Oh wait, have I talked about the people in here yet? I mean, you have your sultan, right? Your pembesar, your kerabat di raja. I didn't mention this. Kerabat raja means the royal members, like the king's brother, the king's sister, the king's mom. That's, you know, she can't be the sultan, can she? The king's cousins, those people. Then ulama, that means the people who spread the agama. Usually, like the agama leaders, alright? Not exactly like any old leader, but the people on the top of the pyramid. Okay. Golongan di perintah, we already said like rakyat merdeka. Who are the rakyat merdeka? You can give your contoh. Peniaga, traders. Petani, farmers. Tukang, which means people who are like experts at one thing. So you can say like tukang masak if you're like a good cook. Tukang perabot, you are what's a tukang perabot? You make furniture, stuff like that. Then nelayan, that means you are a fishmonger, or you could be I can't think of the word. A fisherman. There you go. A fisherman. Hamba, that means your slave, terdiri daripada hamba raja, hamba berhutang, hamba biasa. Hamba raja, the king's slaves. Hamba berhutang, the slave that are in debt. That means you are in debt to whoever you're serving, your master. Hamba biasa, just regular slave. You're a slave. What else is there to jelaskan? So then we talk about the peranan. Peranan is sultan. This thing up here, this man up here, menaungi dan menjaga keselamatan rakyat negeri. You have to protect your the safety of your people. Mewujudkan perpaduan rakyat. You have to make sure your people are also harmonized. Right. Bertanggungjawab terhadap kestabilan dan kemakmuran kerajaan. You have to you are responsible to take care. Not you. You're not the king, are you? The sultan is responsible to take care of the stability and the prosperity of a kingdom. Memperkenalkan undang-undang untuk mengawal rakyat. As the sultan, you also need to introduce laws that can control the people, so you don't have, chaos. It goes back to mengekalkan kestabilan dan kemakmuran kerajaan. And perpaduan. So coming back to the pembesar, the second layer here, menjaga keamanan dan kebajikan. Kebajikan means fully, like the almost benefits, you can think of it like that. Rakyat di kawasan pegangan, because as we talked about it, the pembesar work in specific places, like their kawasan pegangan, what they hold. So, sebagai perantara sultan dengan rakyat, because they're in the middle here, they have to be the people that are going in between, like telling the people about the king's commands, their messages, their orders. Mengutip cukai melalui sistem serah. Serah means gift. That's a system apparently. Dan membekalkan tenaga tentera melalui sistem kerah. You can think of kerah as in like keras. It's like tough up. So we're talking about the military, tentera. Then the rakyat. Again, this is drawing all the way back to 1.1 and 1.2. What is the main thing that a rakyat must do? The golongan di perintah menunjukkan taat setia kepada pemerintah, which in this case is your sultan. Right, mematuhi segala arahan dan tidak menderhaka. You do not betray, you do not go against, you do not riot against. Kerana takut ditimpa tula. It's an extra thing. Because you're scared, takut, that you will receive any kind of misfortune, any kind of disaster, any kind of hukuman. Remember? So, menjadi tentera. It's kind of random, but this is connected to here where like, I'm going to give you the tenaga tentara. Who is a tentara in this case? We're not picking random people off the streets. Those people are your rakyat. Then, menyumbang tenaga kerja melalui sistem kerah seperti membina istana atau jalan. You are responsible for helping the kingdom with all their heavy work, like building the castle, building roads. Infamously, building roads, all this construction work has been known to be very, very cruel. You will learn about this further. Like part 3, the Japanese, their punya landasan kereta api. Yeah, that is something to talk about. Menjadi pengayuh dan pendayung kapal perang is all talking about war. You are someone who is steering the ship or someone who is like rowing the ship, the warship actually. Kapal perang menghadiri majlis umum seperti gotong royong. Kind of random if you ask me. Then finally, we have to talk about what? The final thing is that you can see like a big chunk of text here. That's a lot. So let's go to this, right? Hubungan baik, all of this we've mentioned before. This is like boasting again. Then they say ciri-ciri negara bangsa diwarisi oleh Sriwijaya. We've talked about this. Oh, this is again boasting. It's giving you nilai murni. It's not really sejarah. So let's go over to the site where I want to tell you about tulah. Berikan maksud tulah. Tulah bererti kecelakaan yang menimpa seseorang kerana melanggar larangan atau titah raja dan menderhaka kepada raja. Slow down, that was too many words. Remember how I said that the rakyat, you will obey all commands, mematuhi segala arahan dan tidak menderhaka because takut ditimpa tulah. Tulah right here is the punishment, the punishment, the misery that is given onto someone, that is commanded onto someone who goes against the laws, melanggar larangan. You go against what is not allowed. Ataupun titah raja, you go against what the king has said. Raja yang bertitah dan menderhaka dengan raja, you go against what the king has said. You're scared of punishment. Alright, so that is the entirety of chapter 1, which is all about negara bangsa, and only now on chapter 2 will we talk about what I think is more interesting, right? Nationalism. So that is all. You can go check out the previous video for if you want to learn about 1.1 and 1.2. That is all from me. Jonathan Rizal is out. And look at me with my little Malaysian flag. Okay, bye-bye.